Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Institute for Public Humanities, a podcast featuring conversations about our community's living history. I'm Karen Bullis, and today we have our local architect, Lyle of Lyle, Cook and Martin, joining us to talk about the work he's done in our community. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Karen.
And to list all your projects would take the whole conversation, but just a few that have won awards. We have our very own Morgan University Center. Right. We have the F&M headquarters at Public Square. We also have the amazing restoration of the 1999 tornado-damaged Montgomery County Courthouse. But even in our day-to-day lives, the influence of your work is experienced in Austin Peay Housing. We also have the Foy Student Recreation Center, which has these amazing dramatic spaces to work out in. I say it every time I'm there that I love the proportions, even in the smaller spaces like the functional training rooms. So how did you decide, how did you know when you wanted to be an architect?
Oh, well, when I had to, which is my senior year of high school. I think I finally put two and two together because I grew up, my favorite thing to do when I was little bitty was play with blocks and just piling things on top of each other. I always liked to draw, which I was always the guy that built the clubhouses in the neighborhood, the tree houses. And, you know, I was sort of marshaling the troops. You put this here and we'll do this and do this. And so it just all seemed natural, but I didn't really know what an architect was. And very few people today know what architects are or really what we do. They think we're some kind of odd engineer, you know, which we are. But we're also artists. You know, architecture is called the mother of all arts.
So you've done so many meaningful projects, and it's such a huge endeavor to convince a client to hire you for that first public project. Could you tell us the story about how you got that first major project in Clarksville?
That's an interesting question. You know, opportunities are they come from many different quarters, friends, politicians, whatever. I think it was a combination of all of the above and making enough noise that people think, well, let's give him a shot. It's now your turn. And so that building it's down on lower part of Commerce Street, right before you get to the river. If you're going down the hill, it's on the right. And it was the gas and water department. It's a brick building, and it was, and that's now the Clarksville Police Department. I don't know if you know the building. I threw everything into that building because it just had to be, and it turned out to be a fairly successful project from my view. It hit all the chords that I wanted to hit aesthetically, and it was a successfully built project, you know, which means it was in the budget and we didn't have any big change orders or crises during the process. So, yeah, that's a neat question.
So I noticed that you have a background in masonry and also carpentry. Mm-hmm. And many times, you know, sometimes there are designers that don't have that construction background or ability to make. How did that influence your work as an architect?
Absolutely influenced it. Because I think it did a number of things that, I've run into interns and people that don't know what a concrete block weighs. They've never picked one up. And Frank Lloyd Wright said, a great famous quote from Mr. Wright was, you have to get your hands in the mud from which the bricks are made. And that's a way of saying that you really have to understand the nature of materials intimately, not just some abstraction about what's a 2x4, what's a 2x6, how big are they, what do they weigh, what do they do. And I think it set me ahead of my peers in many regards because I understood how things go together from having put them together. And that's different from thinking about them on paper. It also gave me, I think, empathy for the people that do the work, and that oftentimes they know better than I do how to put something together, and you better be listening, or you stop learning.
Right. I mean, that's invaluable.
Totally. And I think unfortunately, it's one of the things I see most missing in education of architects today. is that we don't require that. We don't require that practicum experience because architecture really, it's an intellectual pursuit, but it's also a trade profession, you know. You're just out there making stuff.
Right. I'd love to talk to you further about the process.
I've learned more from people that aren't architects about process than I have architects, but actually what I really learned from is the doing. Yeah, I think two buildings that I look back on fondly, not just for what they are, but for the process, the University Center and the Foy Center, which came fairly close together, almost sort of in a stream for me. And the thing I think I learned in doing the Student Center was that I didn't do it. It happened. And it happened because I let myself go. And I mean myself. I wasn't trying to be Lyle the architect. I was trying to find what that building wanted to be instead of what I wanted it to be. And I think that's a lot of what I view as a success. The first time I looked at the site plan, the old Student Center was there. I saw this pedestrian connection that was all these little paths, and I thought, you know, really what this campus needs is a piazza. And so I drew this circle right there where it is today.
What year was this?
This would have been probably pre-tornado. We started working on it, would have been 98. And then the tornado hit in 99 and it put everything on hold. You know, we were all busy putting this campus back together. But I just remember spending some of those late nights, and when things come to you is when you're not doing it, when you kind of get in a mode of where it's not you doing it, it's coming through you instead of you. You know what I mean? There's a great musician. His name is Tommy Emmanuel. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tommy. He's considered the best acoustic guitar player in the world. And I heard him not long ago, and he said something that really resonated with me. He said, you have to remove the pith from the reed so the wind of creativity can blow through you. And so that pith is the ego. Once you take that out of the question, something else is happening, and you're getting to the root of things.
It reminds me a little bit also of Louis Kahn, you know, which
we studied. Kahn was our guru. Kahn was our guru, and Kahn was more than a teacher. Kahn was a mystic, you know, and he taught all my teachers. So Kahn in the 60s, people don't even know who he was today because he didn't build that much because his buildings were so doggone challenging. Yeah, Kahn was a magnificent teacher, and he was a philosopher and a mystic. You know, as you get mature as an architect, you don't have to search so hard for the initial concepts. Doing a building's still damn hard because there's so many pieces to a building. It's lots of parts, and it's an activity that engages lots of different people. I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a soils engineer. All of that, you know. But you have to marshal all those forces and then please the owner, which is sometimes. And meet the budget. So it is a complicated.
It sounds almost impossible.
Well, it's hard. It is easy. But the neat thing about the Foy Center is I read one time, Corbusier. I'm sure you knew about Corbusier when he did the Ron Champ. And I'm not trying to draw any parallels to my life at Corbu because he's one of the historical masters, but. The cathedral at Ronchamp, which by many is considered to be the apotheosis of architecture, it's the greatest building ever done, and I visited it, and I agree it is. It came to him in full-blown a vision. And so did the Foy Center. I was sitting there, and I still have the little sketch on my wall, and I did all of it in that floor plan, all the major pieces. And what was neat is that site is, I think what gives that building a lot of its character is the site. There's a diagonal on that site. It's not a rectangle. Some people may not realize that, but it is. That angle is what helped me resolve all that, what you like, that stuff on the corner, which makes it dynamic. Because you had to do something with a corner like that, on the inside. So,
And the structure is beautiful,
Yeah.
like what I assume is exposed structure.
it is.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it is in the large areas, and being able to take advantage of those beautiful pin oaks along the street there and use them as shading mechanisms, which allowed me to make that glass wall without a bad conscience. Because if you didn't have that there, it would be times when it was. You'd put big shades and stuff in there, but yeah, I'm very, very pleased with that building still today. I think it was one of the better things I've done.
How did you convince all the folks who needed convincing about that glass wall? And
Well, I don't think that was ever in question. There were a few things. Sherry Hoppy was the president at that time. At the far end of the building, there's a stair tower, and I had made a round element out of it. It kind of looked like a silo, and I wanted to make it red, and I wanted to use a certain material. And Sherry Hoppy took one look, and she said, I just don't really like that. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to argue with her, but I tried to whine and convince her that it was really the way it ought to go. And so in the end, I pulled back, and it was a better build. She was right. It was overkill. I was trying to insert myself and do a thingy on the end of that building, and it was just the wrong thing to do, and she picked right up on it. So you need to listen to your clients, too. So they're not always right, but sometimes they are.
let's talk about downtown a little bit.
Let's do.
So we've all seen a number of cycles of downtown, revitalization, and then times when the energy's a little less. Can you talk a little bit about your favorite project downtown, and maybe about your thoughts on what's happening, its transformations that are happening now?
Have we got another hour? I planted my flag downtown when I started my office. That's the only place I wanted to be, because urbanism is all about architecture. Cities are rooms, outdoor rooms, really. And I had the benefit of studying in Rome for 5 months. It changed my life. I was a small town kid going to the greatest city on the planet, and one of the oldest. And it changed my life. And so I came back to town with, just an inveterate supporter of the downtown. And I grew up in the downtown. Downtown was it when I was a kid. So I was engaged in all the civic groups, charter members of the River District Commission, downtown DDP, and the Two Rivers Company, which we no longer have no inheritance of those activities, but we have a lot of results from them. The River Walk and the Downtown Commons, to speak of a few. So, putting in brick sidewalks, all those kinds of things were activities. Trees. We didn't have trees downtown. We didn't have thematic street lights. But I'm a great believer that the heart and soul of a place like Clarksville is in its downtown.
That's my favorite place, also downtown.
Which one?
All of it.
Oh,
I just love the
Yeah.
the ability to be, this small place to be a pedestrian.
Yes.
Yes. How about the connection with Austin P? Do you see any steps we could take to further that physical connection for our students between Austin P and downtown? It's so close.
There are half a dozen of them on the shelf. That's what you call master plans. But absolutely, it's something that could and should happen and may happen. It's happening incrementally as Austin P grows, and this campus has improved so much in my lifetime. It's just incredible. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it didn't really look like a college campus. On the weekends, everybody was gone. And it's just a different kind of place today. It has a different vibe to it. It's positive. And so I think eventually it's a matter of the downtown continuing to create an appeal for students, and Austin P recognizing that there are things that they can do too, now that they own properties just shouldered up to the downtown. Parking lots they are, but parking lot is just something waiting to happen. It's land banking. So.
How about you had talked briefly about the downtown commons previously, that as a community engagement project.
Correct. Correct.
In a lot of ways, probably having to deal with so many different components of the process probably give you the tools to be able to deal with the larger community, potentially convince the larger community.
Well, a lot of people, that was a work of many hands. I was only a part of that process. You think, well, how can an open space contribute economically to the value of the surrounding properties? Look at Central Park. That's the great example. The most expensive property in New York is around Central Park. And I think it's just one of the best things in my lifetime that's been built and done in the downtown, period. That and not tearing down the courthouse, which almost happened.
You've had such a huge influence on our community, and
Well,
especially on Austin P.
Yep.
Thanks
I'm
so much.
proud of it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. And
Okay.
thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us today. And make sure to take note of Lyle's work in our community and on our campus. Thank you.
Thank you.